I know.
Well, welcome to our online Voices Against Trafficking conference that many of you have expressed a lot of interest in because we are on the effort to try to stop human trafficking. We believe in human rights, especially for the innocent victims. Today, we've got a terrific lineup for you and a lot of information that you'll need to know. First of all, I want to thank you, our great audience, for supporting us, our charter members, hand-in-hand production, and again, the great speakers you're going to listen to. But let me start off with our fearless leader, Andi Buerger. She is an attorney. She's the founder and chair of Voices Against Trafficking. Our organization started in 2019. It's dedicated, as we talk about, to the eradication of human trafficking. And Andi probably understands more than most about the plight of the victims because she survived human trafficking from the age of 6 months to 17 years old. Can you imagine that? And what happened to her in her life? Really hard, but she has become a fearless advocate, a woman who is basically a passionate savior to so many of those who cannot speak for themselves. Now, a year ago, Andi compiled our very first book, Voices Against Trafficking, The Strength of Many Voices Speaking is One, and we're very proud to say that it's in the Library of Congress. And if you haven't read it and you would like to, you can get it on Amazon.com. A portion of all the proceeds for every book goes to help those victims. And then another great thing, in January, this past one of 2023, Andi launched our Voices of Courage magazine, which is in partnership with WOM Media. The magazine honors everyday heroes who selflessly fight to protect human rights. These champions come from all walks of life to change their communities, their cities and towns, their states, and of course, the global community for the better. Voices of Courage magazine is distributed nationally and internationally, and this also is going to be featured in the Library of Congress. We're very proud of this effort. Andi is a highly sought after international speaker, author, a powerful advocate for the voiceless victims of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. So get ready. I'm very happy and proud to introduce my friend, Andi Buerger.
Well, thank you, BQ. That was so wonderful, and I appreciate you. And for those who don't know, BQ is also the president of Voices Against Trafficking and co-founder. So together, we're kind of a dynamic duo there, but we have lots of members. So people ask, well, what is Voices Against Trafficking? And that's a great question. Voices Against Trafficking is kind of a network of networkers. Think of us as a hub of a wheel, and all the spokes are individuals, nonprofits, law enforcement agencies, people who say, yes, we want to win the fight against human trafficking. We want to partner with you. We want to bring education, prevention tools, awareness to the greater public, whether it's national or international communities. But we want to stand together as a collective voice against this crime against humanity. And so 21st century slavery has been talked about. We have more slavery now because of human trafficking than ever before, than ever could be conceived. And so we're encouraging you. We thank you for being on the program, but we're encouraging you to listen and to find ways where you can also participate, even from the comfort of your own home. So we're going to talk more about that, but check out voicesagainsttrafficking.com. Our members welcome you, and we want to make sure that you get as much information and as many tools as possible, whether it's hotlines and helplines that you put in your phone right now, or it's some of the other things that we have on our website. So Voices Against Trafficking is a voice for the voiceless, and the way we are powerful is when you add your voice to our fight, to our human rights movement, to make sure that no voice is silenced. The other thing, as BQ mentioned, we do have a book. It's a great handbook. We're going to show the cover of the Voices Against Trafficking book so you can see what it looks like on Amazon.com. Again, a portion of proceeds go to victims of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Also, some of the other things that we do, which we'll talk about as well. But this book is a great conversation opener. We have about 18 or 20 authors from all over the world that have contributed to this handbook. And if you don't have it in your library, I encourage you to get it today for your home, your school, your church, your legislative office, because the more knowledge we have, the better able we are to prevent tragedies like human trafficking. And again, the magazine, which has just come out, which we're very excited about and is getting great reviews, Voices of Courage, highlighting the everyday heroes that are on the front lines doing the work, like some of our speakers today. We want you to enjoy 92 pages of mostly content, very little ads, but they're gorgeous. It's a high-end, full-color quarterly publication. Voicesofcourage.media is where you can get your copy today, or you can also get the digital copy today on voicesofcourage.media. So we are going to go ahead and get right into our next speaker, BQ. We have an amazing gentleman, and I can't wait for everyone to hear him.
About heroes. This guy's been on the front line of it all, and he's overseen a lot of heroes that work on behalf of our country and other countries trying to protect the innocent victims of trafficking, and really a lot of smuggling. I can't wait to talk about our good friend, the retired U.S. Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, Distinguished Senior Fellow for Border Security. Let me give you a little background on him, because before he joined the Texas Public Policy Foundation, our wonderful friends with Ken Oliver, he served as the 24th Chief of the United States Border Patrol. And during his 30-year service in the Border Patrol under, now this is important that people understand this too, because it was in a political position. He served under Republicans and Democratic administrations. He earned the respect, the admiration of agents, colleagues, partners alike, while working very successfully to enforce our nation's laws and to secure the borders. And in fact, in a tribute to his great leadership, the CBP Commissioner Mark Morgan called our good friend Rodney Scott the absolute embodiment of the U.S. Border Patrol's motto, honor first. So in addition to serving as the chief of the nation's 21,000 Border Patrol agents, his past assignments have included serving as the chief patrol agent at the El Centro, California sector, assistant chief of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection's Office of Anti-Terrorism, and director of the Incident Management and Operations Coordination Division at CBP, headquarters right in the nation's capital in D.C. Throughout his career in federal law enforcement, I want to go back to this again because I think it's so important. He didn't serve as a political appointee. He was a careerist. That means he worked for us, the American people, without having a political label attached to him. He belonged, to the very prestigious senior executive service, which is the highest level that you can go in the career life of a federal government employee. Now, within the context of the Texas Public Policy Foundation's Right on Immigration campaign, and in his capacity as a senior distinguished fellow for border security, that's a very big deal. Rodney Scott provides America's leading state-based think tank with analysis and recommendations on both federal, state, and local border security efforts. And boy, Rodney, I'm so proud of all the work you have done and that you continue to do on behalf of our nation and really the entire world. Rodney Scott, I turn it to you, my friend.
Well, thank you for that very, very kind introduction. Thank you for everybody listening and sitting through that. I think the most important part that you pointed out, just for everybody to remember, and thank you for doing it, is that I was a government employee in my positions on border security, and most importantly, what we're talking about today. And thank you again for having me be part of this very important conversation. The human trafficking aspects that don't get talked about enough. My opinions on this and the information I'm going to share with you guys today comes from 30 years of experience on the border and really in the trenches to a certain extent. Last part of my career, obviously, was in headquarters, but really understanding how second and third level effects of decisions affect things like human trafficking, even if you're focused on narcotic smuggling. So with that, I'm going to jump right in so we can kind of get some information out there. But I want to make sure everybody understands what's going on the borders today and a little bit of the historic perspective. But what's happening on the borders today, if you've been watching the news at all, sounds very much like an immigration or maybe a narcotics issue, but it is so much more than that. It is literally a national security crisis, and that crisis has gotten worse in the last couple of years. Over my almost 3-decade career, we were consistently getting better and better on border security, and what that meant was we were getting a better idea of knowing and then making decisions about who and what's just simply entering our home. But unfortunately, the chaos that's currently ongoing is literally, in my professional opinion, spoon-feeding vulnerable human beings to the cartels and the human traffickers in a way that I have not seen in a long, long, long time. Every single level, it doesn't matter if you're looking at narcotics, immigration, or the human trafficking side, what's going on our borders is a complete disaster. Why? Well, really today, the transnational criminal organizations that we commonly refer to as cartels, they're getting to control who and what enters our country, not the U.S. government. Those cartels making those decisions is extremely problematic. It's very important, though, for I think everybody to understand as well that when I say the cartels control the border, what does that mean and how does that play out? So just let me kind of explain it to you a little bit. But I also wanted to flip the other side a little bit. We talk about what we apprehend. I'm going to talk a lot about today about what we don't encounter, don't apprehend, and why, and how the cartel controls that. So right now, as we speak, as you listen to me speak, the cartels on our southwest border are controlling every single illegal entry, every single illegal crossing coming across that border. The cartels over the last weeks, months, and hours have paid for informants. They have paid for, unfortunately, corrupt officials on both sides of the border. And they've literally just paid for what we call lookouts or scouts to watch everything that's going on and to map out and report back to the higher levels of the cartel with a pretty good level of reliability about real-time law enforcement deployments along the southwest border. Why do they care about that? Because then the next decision that cartel boss, or we call them plaza bosses, the guy at the local level, the next decision he makes is how many illegal aliens they're going to push across the border, even down to the specific nationalities and demographics of each one of those nationalities, so that they can systematically overwhelm Border Patrol resources and all law enforcement resources on the border. What does that do? Think of it as like a fake play in sports. Basically, they get you to look to the left when what they're really doing is over to the right. So the current politics, if you will, of the day, or the catch and release policies of this current administration, and just some of the rhetoric, has basically created a situation where the cartels now have an endless flow of human shields that they can use to distract law enforcement. When I say human shields, what do I mean? Back to what I just started a minute ago. The cartel decides when and where these people can cross, how many, and even the demographics. That wipes out Border Patrol so that then they can bring in a second wave of people or things through the gaps that were left open behind. The cartels pick and choose who is in the first wave and that second wave. And I think the second wave is what we really need to focus on the most here. That can be anybody or anything. And they are basically paying extra to make sure that those people do not interact with law enforcement. That is how the cartels are controlling the specific border today. How does this affect human trafficking? Well, there's different reports out there from different organizations, but I believe the ACLU even reported that well over 70% of people trafficked happen to be immigrants. And there was actually a 2021 study about prosecutions, and over 49%, or right about 49% of the human trafficking prosecutions of adult cases were illegal immigrants. They're mixed into this. So we really rely on our law enforcement and our agencies to be able to identify those threats. But now put it into a bigger context of the chaos that you're seeing on the border today. This last year, that I will call it a cat and mouse game that we just talked about, Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection played that game 1.3 million times. That averages out to about 6,000 encounters with illegal aliens every 24 hours. I want you to think that in the aspect of time. So a lot of these groups are apprehended in remote locations, and even if they're not, they still have to be transported back to a Border Patrol station for processing. And they usually do that in 12-passenger vans. So how long is it going to take to move 6,000 people in a 12-passenger van? Then, as reported out in the Senate testimony earlier this week, one sector chief told one of our senators that only his sector had apprehended people from 147 different countries. I think it's 174 different countries. But more importantly, 200 different languages and dialects. Border Patrol agents speak English and Spanish. Any other language, they have to get external support either through online or through a telephone service to be able to translate and communicate with people. That takes a ton of time. That 6,000 illegal encounters every single day, not even touching on the gotaways, I'm going to touch on that in a second, is completely overwhelming our Border Patrol agents, so they're not effectively able to go patrol the borders. More importantly to the conversation we're having today, they're not able to dedicate the time they need to do thorough investigative debriefs or interviews with the individuals they come encounter with. Whether it be a family unit and how do you prove that child belongs to that family? Agents under current policy do not systematically fingerprint or photograph any alien under 14 years of age. On top of that, to do any type of DNA testing to try to do a family match, an agent has to be able to articulate in writing a belief or reasons that he believes this individual is being trafficked. When you're dealing with 6,000 people in a 24-hour period, the agents literally don't have that kind of time. They're having to take the information provided to them by these individuals on face value and then just kind of push them through the system. What does that do? First and foremost, it takes away the ability of the agents to really identify and dig in to when you have a family. Is it really truly a family or not? And then unaccompanied minors, they are, as you know, they're processed fairly, or I believe you know, pretty quickly by Border Patrol, and they're turned over to Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services department that runs this program is called Office of Refugee Resettlement. It is underfunded, it is understaffed, And literally, they cannot handle the bandwidth of what's going through. So you don't have, what I would argue, you don't have really good investigations going into the sponsors, because HHS then has to find a sponsor for that unaccompanied child in the United States. Current politics have walled off some of our federal agents from helping in those investigations, those background investigations of the sponsors. On top of that, there's not a lot of follow through like you would have with a state or a local child protective services. Once Health and Human Services puts a child with a sponsor, you just don't have that good management or follow-up that you would like to see. All of this together creates a situation that is just ripe for human trafficking. And let's not forget either, I think many of you probably know this as well, a lot of these individuals don't really understand or know that they're being trafficked yet when they're in the custody of U.S. Border Patrol, or even with Health and Human Services to a certain extent. They think the people they paid to get them across, the smugglers, are just providing a service, and they're not going to realize until later what they've really gotten themselves into. So it's not easy to pull that information out of them. Without time, agents are just, it's very, very challenging, and we're literally handing the cartels an endless flow of humans to use as commodities because of the chaos. Chaos in any situation kills people. Chaos creates cover for criminal activity, and the cartels and the human traffickers love this chaos. With that said, though, this can be fixed. Over my 30-year career, the border was getting more and more secure every single day. We were increasing the effectiveness of Border Patrol agents every single day, which literally means to me buying them more time to focus on debriefs, because we were installing barriers, we were installing good policies that deterred the massive illegal immigration coming across the border. Those policies worked and could be put back in place pretty quickly to get back to what we need to be. You will always have some crime, unfortunately. We'll always have people crossing the border illegally, but basically trying to deter that illegal activity, slow down the cross-border flow, to buy Border Patrol agents, ICE officers, and Health and Human Services personnel more time to dedicate to each individual, can literally put a spotlight on an otherwise very, very dark crime of human trafficking. But like anything else, when you focus on it and you can put some dedication to it, we can make, and we've shown in the past, we can make a big difference. I just want to kind of close and turn it back over on this note. Please, as you're talking about the border and you hear these different issues, don't get sucked into these conversations that it's just about asylum seekers or that it's just about narcotics. All of these issues are interrelated, and you can make it very, very simple. We could make a serious impact on human trafficking if we could just make sure that people coming and leaving our country came and went through the front door. Those are the 328 legal ports of entry where we have personnel readily available, good situations to do a good interview, and we make conscious decisions about who comes and leaves this country. If we can't do that, the rest of the chaos along the southwest border is going to continue to allow the cartels to exploit. And a lot of people want to focus on the children, but as you know, it's humans that are being trafficked of every age, every ethnicity, every background. And good border security can make a very, very significant difference in stopping that and identifying those that are perpetrating it and holding them accountable. I'll go ahead and turn it back over. I don't know if you want to have any questions, but I did want to highlight how different it is today.
I got to tell you, Rodney, I mean, I think you know, and a lot of my good friends know, my mother was a Mexican citizen, and I grew up near the border in California, near Tijuana. My grandmother lived in Tijuana. Then we moved to Brownsville, Texas, right there in the danger zone near Matamoros right now. And of course, it's changed dramatically. And a lot of people, I think, don't realize that many Mexican citizens, many Mexican Americans like myself, really see it in a different level. You know, you had that very traumatic experience recently of that little 1-year-old baby that was dropped off by the river. And had it not been for a very smart Border Patrol agent, that little baby would have drowned. And we read all the time about these coyotes traveling with a carload or a truckload or a van load of people. They'll abandon them and they'll die in the van or the truck or the car. So what you do is very brave, and a lot of people are afraid to use the word human trafficking. And journalists, they want to say smuggling, like it's a cleaner, a nicer way to say human trafficking. So I want to applaud what you do and encourage people to follow what's going on with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And thank you for your service to our country and to our American people and to really a lot of the Mexican people, because they're being abused as well. Salvadorians, Hondurans, you name it, Venezuelans, Argentinians, people that are coming through, along with Chinese and Syrian and people from Ghana. It's huge.
If I could just chime in, thank you for bringing that up as well. A lot of people outside the border communities, they try to stereotype, if you will, they try to talk about border security as if it's anti-immigration. I'm going to remind everybody the United States Border Patrol started out as part of the Immigration Naturalization Service. And we were taught from day one that a really, really important thing we were doing was protecting the legal immigration process, because chaos destroys anything good. And we have a proud history in this country of immigration, but we need to make sure that people do it the right way so that we can actually protect them and protect our immigration system for the future generations. Thank you for pointing that out as well.
And thank you for joining us, Rodney Scott. We really appreciate what you do. And now I'm going to introduce you to someone else that you've got to know about, because she's pretty fabulous. She's the director of special projects for dance awareness, No Child Exploited. And I'm talking about Michaela Gray Bierman, MED. And she's an anti-trafficking advocate, researcher, educator, and consultant. She, as I mentioned, is the director of the special projects at Dance Awareness, No Child Exploited. She's also the host and community producer of a Rogers TV program and podcast on human trafficking called Freedom Fighters Code. Michaela has been a dance educator for 14 years in multiple disciplines. She's conducted research on the positive impacts of creative dance on children. She's founder and creative director for an outdoor art school for children that raises funds for charity. And Michaela, we're so anxious to hear what you have to say, and I bet you even have a really neat video for us to see.
Well, thank you so much. It is an honor to be here and to be sharing with all of you today as a representative of Dance Awareness, No Child Exploited. And I would like to thank all of the organizers, Andi from Voices Against Trafficking, for providing us with this opportunity to share today. I would like to mention that I first got involved in anti-trafficking work after hearing about the tragic story of my motherhood's childhood best friend, who was moved from Ontario, Canada, through the United States and back into Canada and British Columbia, and sold for sex at the young age of 14. And it's really her story that has compelled me to do this work day in and day out. And the work I do now is informed by the inspiring and courageous stories of women and girls, like my mom's friend, who have entrusted their stories with me. Now, over the last decade, children have become increasingly hypersexualized through dance at younger and younger ages. The American Psychological Association's report on the sexualization of girls reveals the negative effects sexualized messages are having on the development of children. Some of these harms include body dysmorphia, eating disorder, poor academic performance. There's a higher risk of abusive relationships and a higher risk of pornography use and many, many other harmful outcomes. Dance Awareness, No Child Exploited, seeks to bring education and awareness to identify and understand this cultural shift that's happening in society, from healthy, age-appropriate children's dance to harmful, hypersexualized children's dance. Now, this shift that's happening in the dance industry is connected to three words: the internet, the media, and pornography. Researcher Gail Dines labels this cultural shift as a pornified culture. Another researcher, Philip Adams, calls it corporate pedophilia. Children's hypersexualized dance grooms children for commodification, for the financial benefits of adults who own and manage corporate business entities. Now, in harmful dance, in hypersexualized dance, children look like adults in adult costumes, choreography, and music, and it's usually accompanied by adult hairstyles and makeup. In healthy dance and educational dance, children look like children, dressed in age-appropriate costumes, choreography, and music. So our mission is to bring international awareness of education to stop exploitation through the hypersexualization of children in dance. Our vision is to promote the art of dance and its benefit to children by creating educational materials that advocate for the safety and protection in all dance environments. So why does Dance Awareness No Child Exploited exist, and how are we achieving our mission and vision? Well, we exist to protect children from hypersexualization in adult costumes, choreography, and music, and to protect the art of dance. We exist to create free research, evidence-informed materials to give adults informed choices about the difference between healthy or harmful dance. We also aim to engage in respectful conversation about hypersexualization without shaming adults or dance studios so that there's a path for reflection and changed perspectives. And finally, we hope to communicate the hypersexualization of children in dance and its connection to the public health issue of pornography. So, what can we all do to shed light on the issue of hypersexualization of children in dance and make positive changes in our communities? Well, there are currently many initiatives and resources underway, but our team would just like to highlight two for you today that we would love your help in sharing and promoting. First, I had the opportunity and utmost privilege to speak with 3 inspiring women who have experienced harmful dance. Each of these women courageously shared how culture, the media, and pornography impacted their journeys and entry into sexually exploitative situations. There's going to be a 4-minute trailer released soon at the end of this month, which you'll be able to find on social media and on our website, danceawareness.com. I would really encourage you to listen to their stories and help share this content through your platforms. Second, we have an exciting opportunity for choreographers, dancers, dance studios, organizations, families, and groups of any size to be a part of a dance contest where contestants choreograph to the song She Loves to Move. You can help us celebrate healthy, age-appropriate children's dance all around the world. All eligible entries will be judged using the same criteria, and there'll be a grand prize winner of $5,000. And if you submit soon, the first 5 submissions will each automatically receive a $100 cash prize. So for more information on that contest, you can visit danceawareness.com/shelovestomove. Thank you so much for your time today. We hope that you will connect with us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter, consider volunteering or even donating towards our work to stop the hypersexualization and exploitation of children in the dance industry. So to end my time with you today, I would like to share a sneak peek of our upcoming video where survivors speak about the hypersexualization of children in dance. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope that this short video inspires you to learn more, to get involved, and to be a part of ending the sexual exploitation of children in dance.
You can think that you're about to go to something innocent, dance related, and yet it still seems hypersexualized. And you're like, this isn't even a strip club.
Dance was not innocent. Dance was not as I was taught as a young girl. Looking back, I can see all these different factors of grooming that were in place that allowed my entrance into the industry much more acceptable.
Wow, what a fabulous sneak peek, Michaela. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Now I get to introduce you to another dear friend of Voices Against Trafficking. He has just been a spectacular link for us on the issue of law enforcement. He's actually our law enforcement liaison, and I'm talking about Eric Karen. He's our charter member, but also I want to give you a little background on him because he's a very special guy. He's a decorated former U.S. special agent, U.S. diplomat, who successfully initiated, managed worldwide covert operations relating to human trafficking, drug smuggling, arms trafficking, child pornography, money laundering, and national security for over 25 years. He held senior positions with the Department of Treasury, Homeland Security, and Interpol. And he earned, as a matter of fact, the U.S. Attorney General's Award for National Security and a pretty impressive citation from the Secretary General at Interpol. Currently, Eric is an international security consultant assisting East African nations in the area of transnational crime. And he volunteers, as I say, as our very special law enforcement liaison for Voices Against Human Trafficking. He's a great writer, by the way. He's a contributor to the Blue Magazine, an independent voice of American law enforcement officers. And his sought after national security opinions have been reported in the Washington Times and the Epoch Times. And as a matter of fact, Eric is the author of a really compelling book called Switched On, The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent. And as you can imagine, he's a very powerful international speaker. So my dear friend, Eric Karen, welcome. And we can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Hey, Ms. BQ, it's an honor to be on with you. And I want to thank Rodney Scott for his service. And I want to thank him for laying the groundwork for my presentation. You know, I think the takeaway from his presentation that is so important that the American people understand is that border security equals national security, full stop, period. That's the takeaway from Rodney's presentation. And we learned the hard lesson on 9/11 that just 19 would-be hijackers took the world down for a few days. And right now, this country is experiencing tens of thousands of illegal immigrants flowing across our borders. And, you know, BQ, I've had a chance over the last year and a half or so to travel to Africa. And human trafficking, if you will, is one of the greatest human rights causes of our times. And I'll say our civilization is at stake. As I speak, 2 million people are being trafficked. 2 million people are being trafficked, either for labor purposes, sexual exploitation, for child soldiers around the world, especially in Africa. You know, it's horrendous in that it's one of the human trafficking is one of the most lucrative crimes in the world. We're talking 300 billion, that's with a B, $300 billion that the cartels are making and other transnational crime groups, terror groups, and state sponsors or terror are making via human trafficking. And it's not just, let me just tell you in the audience here, it's not just for labor and sexual exploitation. We're talking evil. We're talking baby harvesting in Africa. We're talking organ harvesting in Africa, as well as Mexico. And some of those organs are being trafficked to the US. I got news for you, folks. And so that's why border security is so, so important. BQ, there is 10,000 children missing in Nigeria. 10,000 children missing in Nigeria. And most of those children are being exploited. And, you know, I just returned from Uganda. And in Uganda, in 2022, they reported official stats, over 72 human sacrifice cases. And so when we talk about human trafficking, it's much, much more eviler than what you and I and most people can think of. We're talking, like I said, human trafficking involving organs and babies, as well as cannibalism, is alive and well in Africa. And so that's why border security here in America matters. And Rodney hit the nail on the head. What happens here and our policies here affects the rest of the world. You know, I'll leave you with this. I had this young Kenyan official say to me just in the last few months, he goes, you know what, Eric? When America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. That's an important statement from a young investigator from Kenya. He's essentially saying, BQ, that what happens here in America, our policies affects the rest of the world. So we can do this as a country. We can combat human trafficking, but we have to have the political will to do it. If we can fight and defeat COVID-19, a threat that we couldn't even see, we can surely fight the cartels and others who are involved in human trafficking. So I want to thank Voices Against Trafficking for having me. It's an honor. It's a true honor to be on this show and to be working with yourself and Andi and all the other members of Voices Against Trafficking. So thank you and God bless you.
Now, you don't get to go away for a minute. And I'm going to bring Rodney in for a minute too. Maybe we can do that.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that we let people know how they can get your book. And they can go to www.switchedonlife.com. And Rodney, I wanted you to talk to Aaron for a second, for Eric, because he said something that I think is profound that you talked to, but we can't seem to get people to get into it, is how the depth of perversion is that's going on with these people that are trafficking these young people and others. They don't want to cover it. They don't want to use the language. What's your thought on that, Rodney?
Yeah, I think it's a huge problem with society today. I'm a big believer in transparency, whether it be transparency in our government and its policies and what we're doing and just telling the truth, or in a situation like this. A lot of times the truth is ugly, but the only way you get people to really act on something is if they understand the implications of what's going on. In Mexico, people can't report on it because they get killed, but there's no reason here in the United States that people couldn't be reporting on these issues more openly and more accurately. But unfortunately, we're even afraid to put like a picture in a newspaper that might offend someone nowadays. And bringing this up scares people because I think a lot of people don't want to admit that these types of atrocities actually are happening every single day. But thank you guys for trying to continue to get the message out there and to keep the voice going. But unfortunately, the media just doesn't seem to want to cover this stuff because it makes them uncomfortable.
And it's interesting, Eric, and you've been vocal on a lot of this, but according to Reporters Without Borders, and this astounded me as a journalist, that the most dangerous country compared just almost equally with Haiti is Mexico, because to what Rodney said, a lot of these journalists, if they say anything, they end up killed or, their bodies carved up, put in a suitcase and left at the Mexican-American border. Your thoughts on why you think that people are so intimidated by this?
Well, BQ, unfortunately, for decades, the cartels have been able to operate. And unfortunately, the U.S. government is aiding and abetting right now the cartels. And what needs to really happen is these 6 or more cartels that control Mexico, the Mexican government, they need to be sanctioned by the U.S. government. We need to take the gloves off and sanction these cartels and start acting like they're state sponsors of terror, because they are. ISIS did not kill 100,000 people last year, but the cartels with their fentanyl killed over 100,000 U.S. citizens last year. So let's take the gloves off. Let's sanction these cartels, meaning no one will be able to do business with these cartels. And we have a lot invested in Mexico, as you know. We have over $100 billion, that's with a B, dollars invested in Mexico via Ford and the general and other defense contractors, pharmaceutical industries. I say to the Mexican government, you can't control Mexico and the cartels. We will. And if you don't allow us to do it, we will pull out our corporations. We will sanction the cartels, state sponsors, and we'll pull out.
As we go on, I say for all of those people that are watching this, and we're not looking at right versus left, we're looking at right versus wrong. And we thank you, Eric and Rodney, for your profound comments. We have so much more to share. And don't forget to go to switchedonlife.com to get his wonderful book. Let me I introduce you to another great human rights activist, because as you can see, we've got a lot of people here very passionate about trying to take up this fight against human trafficking. It means a lot to so many. And these people have taken it really and vocalized, worked. And one of them is a kind of an interesting silent, because I can relate to him in a way. Ted Jordan. Ted Jordan started his career more than 30 years ago as a DJ. Boy, I get that one. Me too, Ted. And since then, he's lent his voice talents to multiple voice projects, from audiobooks to commercials. He's been an acting coach for the past 14 years and still appearing in national print ads, such as the U.S. Army. He's also appeared in national commercials for Sears, as numerous local and regional commercials. Ted was also a stand-in for Isaiah Washington in the feature film Hurricane Season, starring that great actor Forrest Whitaker. And I Love You, Philip Morris, starring Jim Carrey. He's also appeared in Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, starring Nicolas Cage, as well as many local features. And he's also an onstage theater actor. Having gone full circle, Ted is now writing, directing, and producing his own projects through his production company, Crossing Jordan Entertainment, with his wife and partner, Crystal Jordan. And currently he's in the pre-production of a comedy series, The Sinister Truth, 2019, the comedy short film The Pimp That Stole Christmas, and in development of the action-adventure feature film, The Restorer. He's got a great website too, The Restorer, thepowerofdeception.com, and here he is. We're so happy to have you, Ted. Welcome. Yeah, we got you now. We got you now, Ted. Go
Is this
for it.
thing
We got
on?
that great-
Is this thing on? Okay.
It's
Um,
like totally, and you're on.
yeah. I do this for a living, right? So yeah. Well, I'm listening to everybody. Man, I'm a lightweight by comparison. Rodney, Eric, Andi, and everybody else on the panel. Thank you so much for what you do in this arena. Serious work, and I listen to the news. I don't listen to it as often as I used to because of all the nonsense going on with it. But when I do hear things at the border, it angers me as a citizen. It angers me as a patriot. And, I can only imagine what it does for you guys trying to do your job in a spirit of excellence and not being able to do it properly. We keep you in prayer, and we appreciate everything you guys do. I'm doing my small part. By years ago, I wrote a screenplay called The Restorer, and it's now the Power of Deception. That's the first novel. Also, the second novel is called Innocence Trapped in the Sexual Wheel of Death, which has to do with sex trafficking. Several years ago, almost a decade now, I had gotten the idea because I was doing some research, and I found that the number 2 enterprise on the planet was sex trafficking. And I'm like, nobody's talking about this. Nobody's really mentioning what's going on with this. And the more research I did, the more fascinating it was, and the more upset I was. First of all, as a young kid growing up with pornography and abuse in the household, so I get where some of that stuff comes from. I wanted to do something in reference to that. I've never served my country in the military, although my father did in the Air Force. But through our production company, which is a faith-based production company, that's how I fight. I fight with the acting. I fight with the pen. Well, computer nowadays. It used to be pen, but now it's computer nowadays. And so the medium, Hollywood has a lot of influence in what our culture says, does, and acts. And my wife and I wanted to go counter to the culture. And so this is why we've created what we've created in reference to these vehicles, both feature film and now novels. And again, I just applaud you guys for all the wonderful work that you guys do. It's a thankless job, and you guys have been maligned viciously in the media, from memes to pictures taken out of context with you whipping, immigrants, trying to get them across, all that kind of foolishness that goes on. And again, we're just trying to do our part. And I reached out to Andi several weeks ago in reference to, our book. And she said, hey, I have this wonderful nonprofit, Voices Against Trafficking. And I checked it out. I was like, yeah, we need to be a part of this. In whatever shape, form, or fashion we could be of help, that's exactly what we're looking to do. I meant to hit my timer because I don't know where I am on time right now, but I just wanted to absorb what you guys are involved in even more so, and then maybe export that to others who may want to get involved with this, because this is a serious issue. But it's not only a human issue, it's a spiritual issue as well, because we know that slavery has been around since the fall of mankind. So, and the abuse of children has been around since the Old Testament, sacrificing children to Baal and so on. So, this has been an ongoing fight, and we will never run out of laborers. The Bible talks about, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And we wanted to, add our numbers to that. And again, we just thank you guys for just being on the front lines of this, and really, really appreciate everything that you guys do.
Well, thank you for that great, strong voice of yours, Ted. Honestly, we're so grateful that you're now a friend and a partner with us, along with a lot of great people who are fighting this great cause. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And it was our pleasure. We have a new board of directors, a new member of the board of directors, a guy that we're very proud of. And many of you know who he is, Chris Meek, who is not just only a businessman, but he's a fabulous philanthropist. He is very much dedicated to veterans on issues of mental health. He is the co-founder and chairman of Soldier Strong, a charitable organization supporting U.S. service members and veterans and really focusing on their mental health. In fact, in 2020, he launched Strong online, which is probably one of the best resources, and he's going to tell you about this, that has curated content that includes articles and videos fostering a lot of information and support towards the mental health and well-being of our former servicemen and those that are continuing to serve. He plans to expand the website, which he'll share with you with more original content. And he's also a member of the board of directors of the Hayek Institute. This is for American Renewal. He serves as an adjunct professor. Boy, I'd love to have had a professor like this with so much background at the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs at Syracuse University, and a former board member of the World Affairs Forum and past chairman of the board of directors of the Vermont Center of the Yearwood Center in Stamford, Connecticut. And we're so delighted to have you joining us, Chris. And I'm going to bring Andi on too, because we want to talk to you about all the great things that you're involved with. And welcome. And Andi, I know you've got bunches of questions for our meeting.
Well, you're right. He is a great guy. He's been an advocate, and he is all in with the fight against human trafficking. And Chris, I know you're a dad and you've got young kids. What does this mean to you, as you raise them, and why did you get so involved in it? And then we can talk a little bit more about some of the other things.
Sure. BQ and Andi, thanks again for having me. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be here. And Ted, if you're the lightweight, that makes me the ultra lightweight. So I guess we're in good company. Yeah, Andi, as mentioned, my wife and I have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, and really had a blind eye to human trafficking until I met you about 1.5 years or 2 years ago when you were a guest on the show. And that really opened up my eyes in terms of what the world is like, because I live in Fairfield County, Connecticut, 35 miles outside New York. It's a nice middle-class neighborhood. And you always think, well, it's not going to happen here because there's a white picket fence and 2 golden retrievers and all that good stuff. And that's exactly where it happens. And so just becoming more and more aware of human trafficking issues, to Ted and Eric's point about it being, the second or largest illegal industry now globally. But then, of course, if others have mentioned what's going on with our border, and then, of course, the war in Ukraine. And so that's just giving more and more fuel to the fire in terms of this atrocity that's happening globally.
Awesome. Well, and it is true. A lot of people think, well, it doesn't happen here. It's such a myth, and we know it does. We know even in America alone, every 40 seconds, a child 18 years and under is abducted, or they're lured into something they think is safe, and it turns out not to be. So you're right. No matter what the neighborhood is, no matter what the family unit looks like, it can happen to any child, anywhere, anytime, and as Rodney mentioned, to any adult. And so we must be a collective force, and we're so glad you're part of our force. We're thrilled to have you as a board of directors. You bring so much just brilliant advice, input. Your background is stellar in the financial industry. But I want to talk about your book for just a moment. Next Steps Forward. What did you want to express in that? Why did you write it? And then I think maybe there's another book coming up. So why don't you tell us about that too?
Sure. So Next Step Forward, chapter 1 is really, I'll call it my 20-ish years of personal therapy. I was at ground zero on 9/11 and have self-diagnosed myself as having PTSD from that day. For most of my 25-plus year career in Wall Street, I've been within 3 or 4 blocks of ground zero, and it took me 17 years to the day to go back. And so just want people to understand what that day was like for those of us who were there, then also to show the good that came from the devastation that day. And so that led to the creation of Soldier Strong, as you mentioned, my veteran-focused nonprofit, and then other endeavors in terms of just being able to think about what's next out there, what's on the horizon, that bright shining light on a hill we've heard President Reagan talk about. And so taking devastation and turning it into a positive was really the goal and the objective for the book.
Awesome. That is so great. I know that I read that story very often. You also have, you're a contributing writer to our Voices of Courage magazine, which we really appreciate. There is such an amazing story from your mom, who is kind of a single mom, something that she said to you when you were very young that carried through your life. Would you mind sharing that?
It's a very simple saying. We might not be able to change the world today, but we can change the world around us. It's that simple.
Yep, absolutely.
One small step at a time.
And you have done an amazing job of doing that. And so with your books, and you have come on as a sponsor for our pilot for a television show that's also going to be called Voices of Courage. We appreciate you so much for that. If there's something else that you want to share about human trafficking and why your focus this year increased so much, why don't we just go ahead and end with that. But I want to give you a chance to just really tell people why it's so important to do something today and right now. And even if they've been victimized or hurt, that they can definitely take the next steps forward. They can purchase your book on Amazon.com as well, because it's not just, you don't have to be a human trafficking victim to need help in taking those next steps forward. But it really is an incredible story, an incredible book with great direction. So why now? What's the urgency right now for you about our issue?
It's just like you said before, it's becoming the #1 illegal businesses out there globally. And again, just the crisis at our border, the Ukrainian war, just gives more, again, fuel to the fire in terms of letting people traffic helpless, I won't say helpless individuals, but those who are, that can become victims pretty easily. And so the world is a very divisive place, as Ted mentioned earlier as well. You don't turn the news on because it's just, a couple of bully pulpits speaking and screaming at each other. And so this is something I think that is a very simple cause. From just the concept of it in terms of what everybody can get behind globally to end this. Because if you think about your friend, your brother, your sister, your friend, your neighbor, your parent getting victimized, being trafficked, it can hit home anywhere. You can't Google human trafficking and seeing news articles without having 8 different stings that happened in the last week. I remember looking a couple of days ago and I saw one between San Diego, Arizona, and New Jersey, all within 3 days. And so just raising awareness, having more police training, having more community training will help us get through this crisis.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And Chris, thank you so much. I know you're hugely busy like all of our speakers are, but really appreciate you taking the time. And we are looking forward to having you moderate one of our next forums coming up. We do these every 3 months, so quarterly, just like our magazine. But thank you for your time. I really appreciate that. And we're going to actually talk about one of those tools, one of those ways that people can be prepared as we close out our program. So BQ, I'm going to just send it back to you, and I think you have a video coming up.
I do, and I'm ready to show it right now. So let's go right to it.
Hello, I'm Brian Searcy, founder and president of the Paratus Group. What we do at the Paratus Group is we teach situational awareness. Now, not the traditional type training where it's a one and done. We have a program where over a period of time, you learn habits, behaviors, and a mindset while practicing a process where you learn situational awareness so that you can become the first responder, so that you can take responsibility for your own safety. And then what you do is you take that skill and you make sure that your kids learn that skill. And why is this important, and why am I wearing this t-shirt? It's because the Paratus Group is partnering with Voices Against Trafficking to keep our kids from being human trafficking victims. Were you aware that human trafficking is the second largest criminal enterprise in the world? Were you aware that 1 out of 5 kids today is approached by a predator online, on apps, and on gaming systems to try and groom them to get them to enter the human trafficking industry? It's up to us to empower each other with situational awareness so that we can ensure that our kids do not become victims. And again, that is why the Paratus Group is partnered with Voices Against Trafficking, so that you can enroll in a program where you learn the situational awareness habits, behaviors, and a mindset with a process that we will introduce to you to keep yourself safe, your kids safe, your family safe, and even more important than that, when we all learn and develop this critical skill of situational awareness, we can keep our community safe. The only way we're going to make a dent in this human trafficking industry is for each of us to learn and develop this skill so that we can keep our kids from being victims. Now, there's a link in this email. Please click on that link to enroll in the program. The program is $7.99 a month, and it goes on for 12 months because we want you to learn and develop the habits, the behaviors, and the mindset that are necessary to be able to take responsibility for your own safety. And then, like I said, to make sure you have the ability to transfer that skill to your kids. The other important thing here is that 20% of all the revenue goes back to Voices Against Trafficking, because the ultimate goal when you complete our program after the first 90 days is that you will be prepared to be a voice against trafficking. That's how we are going to make a difference. That is how we are going to keep our kids from being victims. If you have any questions, reach out. But we are looking forward to you being part of the program and actually making a difference, both in your own family and community to keep people safe, but also supporting the great mission that Voices Against Trafficking is doing. Take care and be safe.
And thank you, Brian Searcy. We appreciate you being such a loyal and good partner with Voices Against Trafficking from the Paratus Group. And, you know, what is the thing in your life that maybe made you more aware of, gave you some courage to get it started, to take this interest in human rights and the dignity of human beings and willing to put it on the line? Well, I'm going to mention Andi's book, because Andi had a really powerful book that she started with A Fragile Thread of Hope. This basically tells her life story. I think one of the most compelling parts of that book is when she writes about being a little girl at 5 years old, trying to escape all the brutality and standing on the street, escaping from it and praying, that thinking in her life that she wanted a car to hit her to take her out of it. But she heard a voice saying, "No, I have more for you to do." And boy, she has just been a powerful force for good in this fight against human trafficking. So A Fragile Thread of Hope is also available along with our great book on Voices Against Trafficking on Amazon.com. So this is kind of wrapping it up for us right now. And I want to thank all of you for being with us. And I want to remember that there is this great opportunity for you to follow us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com, Voices Against Trafficking. You can go to LinkedIn and Voices Against Trafficking, and YouTube at Voices Against Trafficking, and for Twitter, it's Voices Against T1. And don't forget about our brand new magazine, voicesofcourage.media. And you take a look at that great magazine. It's powerful. You can get it on digital, print, in the newsstands. And if you get 4 quarterly issues, you can buy them for $65. That's 4 powerful issues. And also, if you are concerned about trafficking victims, or you are, like you say, see something, say something, here's or some numbers I'm going to share with you, the important ones. It's trafficking victims, 1-866-347-2423. The National Child Abuse Hotline is 1-800-422-4453. Now, don't forget, we want you to join Voices Against Trafficking and a lifetime membership. And we want you to live a long, happy life. It just starts at $50. And you can go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com. Join us. And then let me just follow up here and see what else I need to tell you is that we're going to be back with more of these great conferences. We thank all of our amazing speakers, our great founder, Andi Buerger, and we thank you for taking a lot of concern and care about the future of people and their human rights. And our great producers who put this together, Hand in Hand Productions, we could not do it without you, Hand in Hand. Thank you, Matt, and all your great team. So we want to encourage you to be on the lookout for more of our conferences. And don't forget, become a member. Go to join traffic, voicesagainsttrafficking.com. Join us. And God bless all of you, and thank you. And we're going to see you again soon. For now, until then.